What is up, Houston Texans fans? Mello Mike here for the Bull Bash, the podcast of the Houston Texans fans. Ever since Nick Caley was hired as our new offensive coordinator, people have been speculating as to what this offense is going to look like. There's been a lot of talk about, is it going to be a New England Patriots style offense? Is it going to be a Los Angeles Rams style offense? And Caley came out and effectively said that he's going to design this offense to the Houston Texans based upon what he believes is the players' strengths and put them in positions to succeed. And that's just good coaching. But as free agency has progressed, and now we're kind of slowing down, there's going to be minimal movements now because most of the top tier free agents have already been signed. You got a few big names that are left out there who are still deliberating and making decisions, like Aaron Rodgers right now, which thankfully we don't have to be in the quarterback purgatory that is this year. And, it's a good time to be a Texans fan. But making sense of these signings, a lot of people are not making a lot of sense out of the guys that the Texans are bringing in. There was talk about Laken Tomlinson and Ed Ingram. And when it came to situational one-on-one blocking, Kenyon Green was kind of sandwiched in between those guys as to one guy being worse and one guy being a little bit better than him. But the blocking one-on-one was not much better. So there was a lot of confusion towards those moves. And then there's also the addition of Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson, a lot of people have referred to him as a kind of a knockoff Laramie Tunsil, if you will. A guy that has a lot of penalties, and he's a decent pass protector, but he's not the best run blocker. And then there was the new addition of Trent Brown from the Cincinnati Bengals. And, this is a guy that's coming off an injury. He's significantly older. But when we look at it, the one thing that kind of tipped it was the guards that they were signing, Laken Tomlinson and blanking, Ed Ingram. Okay, these guys are about 6'3". They're in that 310 to 320 range. And that goes with Juice Scruggs, who's also 6'3", about 310. And then you have Jared Patterson, who's 6'4", and about, in that 310 range as well. These are the typical body makeups of zone blocking interior linemen. And then you look at the offensive tackles, the guys are like, 6'6", 6'8", and, around 320, 330, bigger type of tackles. This leans towards Nick Haley going to be installing the inside zone for the Houston Texans. And it's something that has been widely used by Sean McVay in Los Angeles and also Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. It is basically your starting point for zone blocking, which everything else is built off of. And I know a lot of Texas fans are probably out there saying, wait a minute, we just tried to install the outside zone with Bobby Sloat. Now we're going to try to go back to zone when we were better in gap blocking. And yes, we are going to be doing that. And that is why they're signing a lot of these veteran linemen who have been in the systems and understand the terminology for an easier transition. And whether they're starters or whether they're backups who are able to help the younger guys like a Scruggs and a Patterson and a Blake Fisher with the transition to the system. The system itself is designed to simplify the blocking. And it will, once the terminology is understood and the assignments are understood, basically make it a lot easier for the younger interior linemen to operate. Now, the difference in the inside zone and the outside zone is outside zone, basically, you have your two options. You're basically attacking the outside of the play design, and you're going to continue to take that sealed side, or you're going to be able to cut back and take the backside seal. But the importance is placed upon the tackles and the tight ends in the outside zone, where inside zone, It's basically there's different ways that the terminology is based. There's a numerical system which assigns numerical values from 2 to -2. Play side is 2. The next defender is designated to 1. But I'm not going to get into that. The easiest way to do it is more common verbiage is covered and uncovered, where basically you have the direction of the play called the play side. Say it's going toward the right tackle. So from the right tackle, you read his right shoulder because this is the direction of the play. And everybody else next to him, you read their right shoulders. And if there's a defender lined up in that right shoulder, that offensive lineman is determined to be covered. Anybody who does not have a defender on the right shoulder is uncovered. And what's going to happen is if you're uncovered, you're going to be responsible for a double team. You're going to move instead of east to west, side to side, you're now kind of attacking in a double team at kind of a 45-degree angle. And the key with this system is going to be the communication, because when you have those double teams and you have to move off and climb up to the second level, you have to communicate effectively. And that is one of the bigger reasons why the Texans are bringing in a lot of these kind of veteran or system guys that understand the verbiage and they understand the communication involved in it to make the system successful. Because a lot of the struggles that the Texans had was there was not a lot of communication between the offensive linemen. And that resulted in the system and the plays just being busted all to hell for the Houston Texans. So what the Texans are doing now is they're bringing in guys that have familiarity with the system or the terminology, and they're going to start building upon that. So when we're looking at this year's draft, a lot of mock drafts have predicted that Tyler Booker was the most mock guard to the Houston Texans. I would take that off the board because of the fact that Tyler Booker is more suited for a gap power scheme. And what the Texans are now going to be looking for is more in the line of a guy like Armand Mimbu from Missouri, who has a typical build, but he is a lot better than a lot of the younger linemen that we have. And I think he would be an excellent fit, depending on where he goes in the draft. And a lot of the reason why Nick Caserio has signed these guys as well is that they're either stopgaps for a year or they're going to be backups in case they bring in somebody that they deem to be an upgrade at the position. So Nick Caserio is not forced into a pick based on necessity. He has all the bases covered. They say, okay, this is our plan B in the event that we cannot get our plan A in the draft. In case we cannot get an Armand Mimbu at guard. In case we cannot get, and this one is way off of the books, the best tackle for this system, in my opinion, would be Will Campbell from LSU. But you're talking about having to trade up potentially into the top 10, give up a lot of draft capital. It's just a very, very strong leap, and it's not one that I would make based upon desperation or the fact that we need better offensive tackle play. Also, it gives the Texans the flexibility. Say they want to go playmaker. We've already known that they had an interview with Matthew Golden from Texas, and they still got like 30 visits. Because Matthew Golden, being an inner city product from, Texas, doesn't really count against those 30 visits that they had because he's within the state. And he also went to the University of Houston as well. So he's considered a local visit. And he's not one of their national top 30 visits that they will get. So there is that. Ultimately, I can look at, the Texans going with an Armand Mimbu. Will Campbell's really going to be a big stretch. They might have to move up a couple of spots for Matthew Golden, if that's possible. There's also the possibility that Matthew Golden could go anywhere between that 15 to 20 range, and the Texans are not able to to move up far enough to acquire Matthew Golden. I believe he's, in my opinion, he's probably the second best receiver in this draft next to Tatoria McMillan. So that would be one of those things. And then I don't think the Texans are going to invest in a tight end in the first round. Um, I just don't see Colston Loveland having the inline blocking capability, nor does he have that blocking for the move tight end. There's other guys out there later rounds that would be better and more adequate to do this. I also think that these are roles that Brevin Jordan and Cade Stover can fill more adequately. And then the Texans also added a natural fullback this offseason with Jacob Johnson, the former New England Patriots fullback. And this guy is a traditional fullback in a sense. He's not there for safety valves. He's not there to hand the ball off to. His job is specifically to clear lanes. So the Texans are going to be going more to a power-oriented inside running game based upon the inside zone philosophy. And they will be utilizing a fullback. They will be utilizing move tight ends. So there's just a little bit of speculation on my part, but from what I'm seeing, everything with the free agency has aligned to this. So I hope this kind of makes sense for all the free agent signings on the opposite side of the ball. As to everything else, I mean, it was just simple logistics for Nick Caserio. Shore up your defense because that team is closer to the top. Shore up your special teams. Again, that unit is closer to the top of the league. And then you're going to use most of your draft capital on shoring up your deficiencies in the offense. And to be honest with you, there just weren't very many good options out there in free agency now that I understand what they're trying to do with the other guards and tackles that were available. And teams are also overpaying for those players. And Nick Caserio is not a guy who's going to continue to do that because he's already got Titus Howard on that offensive line. He's overpaid for Shaq Mason and Laramie Tunsil. So you can see where he's a little bit hesitant to kind of go out there and do that again. So in all, he's used free agency to shore up the defense. The big trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to be a big one. And I think the only needs that I see on the defense side of the ball for the Houston Texans going into the draft is going to be for a run-stopping defensive tackle, 0 or a 1 technique, guy that can play inside and kind of function in the way that Boli Bodakasi did. There's still an option that Bodakasi could come back to the Texans if his medical situation clears up for him. Could be a late season addition for him. And then there's still the situation of adding more depth to the secondary, the linebacker units. Our backup linebackers right now is Jamal Hill, Jake Hansen, and then Nick Neiman, who they just added to replace Neville Hewitt. And, the starters are the same, so they could look to potentially add a new linebacker in the first round because I wouldn't put it past D'Amico Ryans. But at this point, I think really the first round pick should be utilized for either an offensive skill position player or an interior offensive lineman. And then I think the Texans need to focus on shoring up the interior defensive line. They need to add maybe even more wide receiver help or guard help in the second round, so based upon what their first round pick is. I also think they need to add a little bit more to the safety room, being that the starting positions are filled, but we still have MJ Stewart who's resigned there, and they just released Brandon Hill, who just could not clear medicals. So there's still a position of need in the secondary at safety. We could always use more depth at cornerback. So those are still options that are going to be on the board there. And thank you guys for joining me. Leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscribe. Let me know what you feel. And go Texans.